Jeroen Wink is the CEO and co-founder of Dawn Aerospace. He obtained his MSc in Aerospace Engineering from the Delft University of Technology, with his thesis focused on the development of disruptive spacecraft propellant. Jeroen led the DARE team of 40 engineers in the Stratos II sounding rocket project, successfully designing and executing its record-breaking launch. He now heads teams across both the Netherlands and New Zealand, designing, building and integrating high-performance green bi-propellant propulsion products for small and large satellites. The company is delivering the world's first alternative to hydrazine-based propulsion products and is in the development of a fully reusable gas and go spaceplane for small payload launches.
So welcome everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in on this presentation, and thank you to Alistair Scott and the rest of the BIS team for giving me this opportunity to present on our company. My name is Jeroen Wink, co-founder of Dawn Aerospace, and we are a near-space transportation company active in the fields of space propulsion as well as space transportation. And today I will be taking you through our company's history, our current plans and developments, as well as our future outlook. So Dawn Aerospace is a near-space transportation company working on deliver, position and return of satellites. So we mean with this the delivery of hardware to space by means of reusable spaceplane technology, the positioning of satellites in orbit through high-performance green propulsion, and in the future also the returning of assets from space to really unlock the value of space back at Earth, down at Earth. The company got started in late 2017, but in fact the seed of the company, so to say, were sown already back way earlier at the Delft University of Technology, when myself and my co-founders of Dawn Aerospace got involved in a student project called Stratos of the group Delft Aerospace Rocket Engineering. And in this context, we were developing successfully developed a 10 kilonewton hybrid rocket that we developed from scratch and successfully launched to an altitude of just under 22 kilometers. And in so breaking the European altitude record of the time. This was a very great experience for us all, really experiencing the building of a project, building of a product, raising funding, organizing a big group of people, dealing with all the stakeholders that are involved with a typical rocket launch. But at the same time, it also made us painfully aware of the inefficiencies and the complications that such a traditional launch typically is subjected to. So I will get to what exactly those issues were in a little bit. But for now, it suffices to say that we started the company in 2017 to address those issues. And right now, we're with a team of roughly 30 people full-time, spread over our two operations in the Netherlands and in New Zealand. So we're in Delft here in the Netherlands and in Christchurch down in New Zealand. Majority of our staff is engineering. We have quite a diverse group of people in terms of, say, age and background. Unfortunately, not so diverse when it comes to gender. We're trying to address that. And yeah, we have people who came in from a range of aerospace companies and institutes that have joined the team by now. So before, the majority of this presentation is on the delivery part, or on the spaceplane. But first, I will talk a little bit about our positioning technology, as that is something that is in space already right now. So our first commercial activity focused on the development of this green propulsion. So we are using widely available propellants such as nitrous oxide and propene, which allows us to offer a an alternative to traditional hydrogen propulsion systems that satellites typically use, at a vastly lower price point with very simple and straightforward logistics, fully compliant with REACH and other legislation that will make hydrogen obsolete. And while doing that, we actually offer a performance in terms of specific impulse and impulse density that is in many cases superior to hydrogen and all other proposed initiatives. Right now, this focuses, or the most mature in this development are, say, two product lines. One is the Cube Drive, which is a product family aimed at nanosatellites, 3U, 6U CubeSats, and the like. The first system of this has been recently launched on the In-Orbit Now satellite of the Orbit, so it's in space now. And two additional launches of this system are planned for the next few months. And then secondly, we have our line of sub-drive thrusters and sub-drive propulsion systems, which is using the same concept, but then applied at a much larger scale to microsats, small sats, and anything larger than that. And the first one in line there is our B20 thruster. It's a bi-propellant thruster delivering a thrust of 20 Newton. And we recently completed qualification of that system, and the first satellite carrying 6 of those is planned to be launched this December, with a second satellite carrying another 6 of these thrusters being scheduled for launch in the mid-2021. So we're getting our heritage in space, we're getting traction, and with this we cater the fast-growing market of small satellites in their propulsion needs. And this is a fast-growing market indeed. So when we look at the past, around 10,000 satellites and spacecraft have been launched since Sputnik 1, the dawn of the space age. And if we look at the projections for the next 5 to 10 years, more than 20,000 commercial satellites are planned for the next 5 to 10 years. So it's a massive increase in the amount of satellites that are required to be launched and that will be launched. And these satellites do great things. They connect people all over the world. They bring mobile connectivity to remote places. They connect the rural environment to the internet. There's Earth observation, tackling poaching, illegal fishery, illegal deforestation. There is Earth observation, improving the weather forecast and climate monitoring. So these satellites, they do great things. We are, however, facing big challenges in getting all these satellites into space. So the biggest problem, and this is also one of the problems we faced during our student project that I mentioned, is that rockets, they do not integrate with airspace. For each launch, even for a reusable rocket like the SpaceX Falcon 9, which is in fact where this graphic that you see now comes from, vast amounts of airspace and vast amounts of sea space have to be evacuated, which means that with aircrafts alone, hundreds of flights are rerouted or delayed when a orbital launch is taking place. Perhaps right now during COVID, aviation is not on top of mind of most people, but before COVID, and rest assured, after COVID goes away, aviation, the demand for aviation will keep on growing. So this is a big conflict. And these delays and these rerouting of airlines, it is now, say, acceptable when there is a launch cadence of around once per month. It might still be doable if there are many launch sites used to get to a weekly launch cadence. But if we really want to launch all these tens of thousands of satellites in the next decade, we need to go to a daily launch. And if we just look at the conflict that launching has with aviation, this is impossible if we do it the traditional way. On top of that, most rockets right now are still expendable, and expendable launches are not sustainable, both from an economic sense and from an ecological sense. So for each rocket launch, tons of debris, be it rocket structures, being it residual propellants, you name it, they end up in the environment, they end up in the forest, they end up in the steppes, or they end up in the ocean. Again, right now, this is an issue that, while being bad for the environment, the amount of launches is still quite small, so it seems to be accepted, although less and less so. But this is definitely not a sustainable and practical way forward when we go to the future of mega constellations and the daily launch cadence that comes with it. So this is wasteful, and it will simply not scale. So our mission, and the mission of my colleagues and I when we started Dawn Aerospace a few years back, was to address these issues and to bring the operational model of aviation to space. So what we mean by this is that we want to enable a truly scalable, accessible, and a sustainable way of how we access space. We do this by utilizing an aviation approach to space access. By bringing aviation's efficient operational model to the space industry, we will be able to massively decrease the bottlenecks financially and logistically of getting to space, while minimizing the ecological footprint as well. In our vision, launching a satellite with this concept will become as easy as booking a flight. Before I dive into a bit more detail about our concept, I first want to take away a few, common misunderstandings, or I want to prevent a few misunderstandings that commonly take place. So, by saying first what our vehicle is not. So our vehicles, our concept, it's not a typical air launch such as a Virgin 1 or a Pegasus. Even though our first stage looks like an aircraft, it is rocket powered and it carries a significant amount of delta V. So our winged vehicle is part of the launch system. At the same time, we have a two-stage to orbit concept. So it's not a single stage to orbit concept like Skylon or some other concepts that are out there, which makes that our re-entry environment is much more benign. And in fact, the heat load while re-entering is around the percent of the heat load that a orbital vehicle will be subjected to. And lastly, while it is an aircraft, it is an aircraft that is designed for a particular mission, namely access to space. So it is not designed to have, say, endurance or range figures that are comparable to conventional aircraft. The Dawn Aerospace concept entails, as I said, a two-stage to orbit launch vehicle, where the first stage is a fully reusable, rapidly reusable spaceplane. So the spaceplane, together with its upper stage and the payload, they take off from a regular runway using existing infrastructure. Under rocket power, the vehicle ascends on a lifting body trajectory, and at around an altitude of, say, 10 to 15 kilometers, we break the sound barrier and turn into a more traditional rocket trajectory. And at altitudes between 100 and 150 kilometers, the second stage and payload are separated from the space plane. And while the second stage and payload continue their way into orbit in a very conventional manner, like most two-stage to orbit launch vehicles will inject their payload to space, the first stage space plane will in fact re-enter in a controlled manner and then glide back to the launch site, or the airport, I should say. At this airport, the space plane lands, the space plane representing the vast majority of the hardware involved. The space plane is serviced, fueled, re-equipped with upper stage and payload, and ready again, ideally within the same day. So very short turnover time. Now, this is, of course, easier said than done, and we realize this, and as such, we have embarked on a long but hardware-rich and test-rich development program. We take an iterative approach. We build a little, we test a little, and then we build a little again. And this approach, or this plan, I should say, is split up in 3 distinct phases. And right now we're busy in the middle phase, which entails the Mark II Aurora vehicle, of which I will give you some more details in a moment. So the first phase of our development plan, which we conducted or executed on between 2017 and 2018, was our Mark I vehicle, which demonstrated frequent rocket-powered and autonomous flight on a UAV. We achieved numerous rocket-powered flights, both remotely controlled and fully autonomous, on our vehicle. And with this, we demonstrated our concept in a qualitative way. And the next step is to demonstrate the concept in a quantitative, representable way. So we are demonstrating our concept now in a relevant environment with the Mark II. The Dawn Aerospace Mark II, named Aurora, is a small-scale version of the eventual spaceplane. However, despite it being a scale model, despite it being small-scale, it actually has the performance necessary to reach space. So it has a delta V performance that is quite comparable to the first stage of a two-stage to orbit system, and hence also comparable to the first stage of our orbital launch concept. It will be the first vehicle that will fly to space twice a day. The vehicle features a double delta wing design, fully or almost 100% constructed from carbon composite materials. It has a pump-fed liquid rocket engine using hydrogen peroxide and jet fuel as its propellant. On top, so that's what makes it a rocket and what gives it the delta V performance it needs to fly the suborbital trajectories. At the same time, it's really designed as an aircraft. It's really designed as a UAV. So it's equipped with ADS-B compliant systems to ensure that it can be seen as well as see other aircraft. Command and control as well as communication are developed in a redundant way, and as such it fully complies to the Part 102 regulations of the Civil Aviation Authority in New Zealand. So this will not only be the first vehicle that flies to space twice a day, it will also be the first UAV from a certification point of view that is able to fly to space. So similar to the first stage of the orbital launch vehicle, the Aurora has a nominal trajectory that takes off horizontally from the runway and initially perform a lifting body trajectory, really leveraging the lift that the vehicle and its wings provide. But then at altitudes between 10 and 15 kilometers, the vehicle will rapidly pitch up and follow a more ballistic-like trajectory. It's also at this altitude that the vehicle will break the sound barrier and really continue its flight in a ballistic way, similar to most launch vehicles. The vehicle will reach apogees above 100 kilometers, and around apogee it will coast for a period, where typically we will perform microgravity or other experiments from payload customers, after which the vehicle reorientate itself for its re-entry using a set of reaction control thrusters. The relatively mild re-entry will be followed by a glide back to the airport, to the runway that it took off from. And similarly to the orbital launch vehicle, the Aurora will have a very short overhaul time, where we basically do a service, some basic checks, and then equip, if relevant, a new customer payload, or we will fly the same experiment for the customer on short notice. We refuel it, and it's ready to go again in the same day. Now, this vehicle is currently, as I said, under development. So critical components like the bi-propellant rocket engine are being evaluated on the test bench. Our pilots, as well as software engineers, are refining their skill and the control algorithms through simulations and through software-in-the-loop test, as well as through flight test, actually, on one of our smaller aircraft, like the Mark I that I showed you earlier. And we also recently completed the assembly of our first airframe, which is starting its test phase. So we record this presentation now in October of 2020, and we recently completed the first taxi test, and we're gearing up for the actual flight test. So we're on track for maiden flight still this year, which will mark the beginning of an intense flight test program where we will gradually extend the flight envelope with each flight and each test card that we go through going a little bit higher, flying a little bit faster until we're ready to fly to space. And then next year, the Aurora should be the first vehicle to fly to space twice a day. Now, the Aurora, while being a very exciting project in and by itself, is, as I said earlier, only the middle phase of our development roadmap. It's really a stepping stone. So the Aurora is demonstrating our spaceplane technology in a representative environment or in a relevant environment, after which we will have to scale it up. So with the core technologies being demonstrated and validated, we will scale those up to a much larger vehicle, our Mark III, that is capable of carrying much more significant payloads, as well as an upper stage to reach to actually insert the payload into orbit. So where the Aurora is a suborbital vehicle, the Mark III will be an orbital class vehicle. The upper stage, using the same technology building blocks, technological building blocks, so the same type of tanks, same type of propulsion that we developed for the Mark II, just on a different scale. And the same is true for the Mark III, but then yet on a much larger scale. So the larger aircraft combined with the upper stage completes our orbital launch system. And with this, we have a vision that by 2025, we can offer frequent and available and low-cost rides to space, as well as repositioning satellites on demand through our, by then, widely spread and widely proliferated green propulsion technologies. So with that, our vision of the future is abundant near-space transportation. Our technologies will make the delivery, positioning, and returning of satellites as easy as booking a flight. And on this note, I would like to thank you all for taking the time today to learn about our company and to join us in this exciting journey that we have ahead of us. And I would like to thank Alistair Scott and the rest of the BIS team for giving us this opportunity to present to you today. So thank you very much for your attention.